Thank you.
Thank you very much. Behind tab 8 is a TELP financing for the New York Society for the Relief of the Ruptured and Crippled, maintaining the hospital for special surgery in the amount of $20 million. As you know, it is a policy of Public Authorities Control Board that TELP financings which exceed $10 million be presented both to the Authority Board and to PACB for approval. This TELP financing includes various equipment, including OR nursing and IT equipment, as listed in the attached equipment list. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Portia. Are there questions for Portia? HSS proposed TELP financing? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve it? Sandra, thank you. Charlie, thank you for the second. All in favor, please indicate with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Carries unanimously.
Behind tab 9 is the Rochester General Hospital TELP transaction with Portia Lee presenting.
Thank you very much. Behind tab 9 is a TELP financing for Rochester General Hospital in the amount of $20 million. As you know, it is the policy of Public Authorities Control Board that should exceed $10 million, presented both to the Authority Board for approval. This TELP financing includes various IT and hospital equipment as set forth in the attached equipment list. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Portia, thank you. Questions for Portia? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve the TELP transaction? Charlie, thank you. Is there a second?
Yes.
Sandra, thank you. All in favor, please indicate with aye.
Aye.
There are none opposed. The motion carries unanimously. We're now going to move to item 10 on the agenda. And it's the report of the Corporate Governance Committee. Mr. Chairman.
The Governance Committee met yesterday, went through the routine of adopting the minutes from this last meeting in December, and then reviewed with council various measures that are required to be reviewed on an annual basis. And we're going to turn that over to Michael at this point to
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
explain it to everybody that what we have to do.
Certainly. The annual corporate review obligations can be broken into two basic groups: corporate governance items and operational policies and procedures. From a governance standpoint, the committee did review with staff yesterday the corporate governance items, which consist of the governance committee charter, the mission statement and performance measures, the associated metrics to quantify performance goals, and DASNY's bylaws. With respect to the governance committee charter, no changes or updates are recommended by staff or the committee at this time. With respect to the mission statement and performance measurements, two recommended minor clarifications are before the board for consideration to Goal 2, changing the phrase highly effective to highly trained. The rationale for this change is that highly trained represents a performance measure that could reasonably be tracked under the metrics, which we'll talk about in a moment. Similarly, staff recommended changes to Goal 3 to focus the metrics on the public policy goals of New York State. The Governance Committee, after review and discussion, agreed with each of those recommended changes. Turning to the metrics themselves, under Goal 2, look at the red line version. This is a little bit easier to see. That's in your packet. Staff recommends changes to correspond to the educational achievements, professional and other licensing, hours of training that will be tracked and reported by DASNY on an annual basis. To provide flexibility and increase accuracy of reporting, the standard is being changed to, for licenses, is being changed to an including without limitation standard. Training will also include hours spent in developing skill sets of both board members and employees, with subcategories for professional development training, as well as the state mandated training requirements we're all familiar with. Last, the metrics will be maintained for the number of hours the board members and staff dedicate each year to ethics training. In response to a question from the committee, we did confirm that the estimated completion time for each training session, that's not a video training session, will be used as the measurement of time spent by each training participant. Under metrics goal 3, clarifying language is suggested to recognize this fiscal year's formal transition to Governor Cuomo's 30% minority and women-owned business enterprise contractual participation goal. The changes here are basically in the presentation. The 30% MWBE goal is stated first for contracts executed after March 31st of 2015, and second in the metric is the obligation for DASNY to continue to track the applicable construction goal on contracts issued through and including March 31st, 2015. In response to a question from the committee, we did confirm for the record, and I'll confirm it again here, that the intent of the second criteria is to provide for tracking of the previously established MWBE construction goal on contracts issued on or prior to 3/31/2015, which goal may be slightly below or slightly above the 20% standard, which used to be in effect here at DASNY. Moving down a little bit further in the red line to initiation of new programs. New programs are defined as matters in development and not part of DASNY's core mission. Conversely, tracking of new programs will cease in the fiscal year following the fiscal year during which the program becomes part of DASNY's core mission. Last, the number of hours spent providing support to other public agencies and the legislature will be tracked and reported, whether or not the program is implemented or becomes part of DASNY's core mission. After discussion, the Governance Committee decided unanimously to recommend to the full board the amendments recommended by staff to the mission statement and performance measures, including the metrics to quantify performance goals. We do have a resolution I can break at this point for the resolution that's in the packet.
Let's go in the order that you've, let's go in the reverse order. There are three resolutions that, for documents that Michael has discussed. We'll start with the annual review of guidelines, mission statement and revised performance measurements and revised metrics. There's a resolution that give us the opportunity to approve those annual revisions, and Michael has just discussed them. You all had a chance to take a look at them. Assuming that you have, are there any questions for Michael about the mission statement and revised performance measurement and revised metrics? Hearing none, may I have a proposal, please, a motion, thank you, to approve the revisions in the mission statement and revised performance measurement and revised metrics. Thank you, Charlie. Thank you very much. Is there a second? Sandra, thank you. All in favor, please indicate with aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Next on the agenda from yesterday's governance meeting and also on the board's agenda for today is the proposed amendments to DASNY's bylaws. Every year we're required to review and approve our bylaws, and this year staff is recommending two changes for consideration that were reviewed with the committee yesterday. First, staff is recommending the deletion of responsibility for information services function from the Chief Financial Officer duties in Section 6.4 of the bylaws to correspond to the realignment of those duties within DASNY. The placement of this function under the CFO is a remnant of prior administrations, and this matter had been deferred pending the retirement of the acting CFO and hiring of our new CFO, Kimberly Nato. Second, staff recommends that the bylaws be amended to make provision for email notification to board members of committee and regular meetings as well as special meetings by amendment of section 3.4 and 7.3 of the bylaws. In response to a question from the committee, we did confirm that email notification would be to the official email address on file in DASNY's counsel's office and would not involve text messaging or other forms of electronic media. It would be a straight up email. After discussion, the Corporate Governance Committee decided unanimously to recommend to the full board these amendments to the bylaws, and the resolution for that is in the book.
Thanks. Other questions for Michael about the proposed rules? Hearing none, we have a motion to approve. So moved. Thank you very much, John Johnson. Is there a second?
Second.
Roman, thank you. All in favor, please indicate with aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
In the operational procedures and policies and procedures group, the Governance Committee conducted its annual review yesterday of the following operational policies and procedures: Code of Ethical Conduct for board members, the Whistleblower Protection Policy and Procedure, the policy regarding payment of compensation and reimbursement to and time and attendance of senior management, and the guidelines pertaining to disposition of certain property owned by DASNY. Staff recommended no changes to any policies or procedures at this time, and after discussion, the Governance Committee concurred with staff's recommendation. I advise the board and will remind everyone here today that DASNY's guidelines pertaining to disposition of certain real property owned by DASNY must also be annually reviewed and approved by the board and filed with the state comptroller on or before March 31st of each year. We do have a favorable recommendation from the Governance Committee to go forward with that resolution, which is in the board book. Thank you.
Are there questions? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve the resolution? Thank you. Is there a second? John Gardner, thank you. All in favor, please indicate with aye. Aye. Motion carries unanimously.
So the last item that I'll report on for governance before turning it over to Chairman Johnson is before the board for consideration is a proposed resolution authorizing certain officers to undertake responsibility for complying with the State Environmental Quality Review Act, or SEQR. There's some history behind this. On January 31st, the board authorized the authorized officer having responsibility for DASNY SEQR unit to undertake responsibility for SEQR compliance. On February 27th, 2002, that resolution and authorization was amended to expand authorization to include Jack D. Homecow, Director, Environmental Affairs, based upon Mr. Homecow's substantial experience in environmental affairs and personal working knowledge of DASNY's projects. From a corporate organizational perspective, responsibility of the SEQR unit has recently been realigned to the Managing Director of Special Services and Client Solutions, which from a governance standpoint is not a staff officer position. Therefore, staff is recommending adoption of a new resolution ratifying Mr. Homcow's previous authorization and authorizing staff officers as defined in Article 6 of DASNY's bylaws to undertake compliance responsibility for SEQR. The staff officers under the bylaws are the President, the Vice President, the Chief Financial Officer, General Counsel, Managing Director of Public Finance and Portfolio Monitoring, and the Managing Director of the Construction Division. There is a resolution in the packet, and that will conclude my part of governance report.
Thank you very much, Michael. Are there questions about the resolution? Hearing none. May I have a motion, please, to approve it? John Johnson, thank you. Is there a second? Second. Thank you very much. All in favor, please indicate with aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passage unanimously.
In addition, the Governance Committee, first of all, appreciates the excellent response to the annual board self-evaluation. It's a 100% result, which is better than in the last couple of years, so that's very helpful. We did spend a considerable amount of time discussing the tabulation of the results of your efforts, and had a thorough review of certain parts of it with management, and we'll be back to you at the June meeting with some proposals on how we should move forward in the next few months.
Thank you, John. The next item on the agenda commences with management reports. Item 11, report of the president.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. Before I go into my report, I would just like to say, we've received notification. We don't know how accurate it will be, but we've gotten notification that on March 31st, a certain person named John Pt2, who has served DASNY at the highest standard for more than 30 years, is retiring. And so I wanted to say, John, thank you. We'll do a little more, but I thought it was important to recognize, we think it might be his last meeting, but we're not certain. And John has clearly been an asset to the leadership at DASNY over the last 30 years, and certainly the DASNY organization represents some of the highest values that we have here. In my 10 months here, he has been very helpful in giving me clarity on how to make changes in this organization. And I would just say that we will certainly miss him. Certainly as the head of finance, as the managing director of Downstate Construction, and as a food critic. You know, John, thank you, and I would just say, we hope to see you again, and certainly keep us updated on what you're doing, because we know with that repository of information that you have, we will be searching you out. I can assure you of that. With that, I'd like maybe Steve, just to, you know, this is the world we live in. We got to put people on the spot, and maybe has a word or two. If in fact the papers are accepted.
Do I have to turn around and look at him?
Your choice.
Well, I can't say enough about John. He, when I took this position back in 2008, I went to Mike Corrigan and said, I'm taking it on really one condition, that either Mike or John join the construction division, which at the time I think were kind of crazy proposals, but the managing director at the time allowed for that to happen, and John joined us. He joined us downstate where we had a gap, and over the past 8 years, he has done really fabulous work on behalf of the construction division in DASNY. He's filled a gap down there for us that, you know, as I look out past March, I'm a little nervous, but I do know that we can reach out to him and, you know, continue to tap his vast experience here at DASNY. He's taught me a ton, and the first thing he taught me was to always wear a tie when I go to a board event. We went to my very first board meeting back in Buffalo. Back in 2001, I showed up without a tie on, and he sent me back to the hotel and told me to grab a tie. So since then, it's been great for me. He's been a great mentor and a leader, and we will miss him. So thank you, John.
I'd like to thank the board for all of their guidance and support throughout the years. It's been a pleasure serving under you for half of my life. And I would like to thank Mike and Steve for allowing this unusual transition in careers from finance to construction. It's been a real pleasure. And Steve taught me a little bit without a tie. So, mutual experience. So, and I do appreciate Gerard's remarks. One of the things I will miss by leaving is to see some of these changes that I've been supportive of for many, many years to finally be implemented. So I thank you for that. So it's been a pleasure. Thanks.
Wow, you know, teary-eyed. Thank you. Now to the operating budget. Enclosed, you will find the updated budget-related documents for your review. These include the proposed DASNY operating budget for fiscal year 2017, a financial plan, the annual fee structure resolution, and a resolution adopting the proposed operating budget. Mike, you want to say anything? Is there anything that we should?
I mean, the expense revenue side of the budget is identical, or virtually identical to what was proposed back at the end of December. The fee structure at this point is unchanged going forward.
Thank you, Mike. You all have had a chance to review the proposed operating budget. Are there any additional questions? We've had the opportunity to speak with management on a number of occasions about proposed OB, but there may be some questions for all. This is the time.
I'm just looking at the numbers on administrative fees that we collect and the reduction that, I think you probably told us this before, but remember, what are we assuming in this budget about that level of collection compared to past collection?
Right. I mean, going in terms of the private conduit issuance side administrative fees, we're assuming the natural melt through the natural defeasance of the bond. We also still have a modest assumption that we might lose some of the existing portfolio to refunding. So it's probably, I won't call it worst case, but it's conservative on the low side. And to the extent that, we retain our portfolio, it doesn't get refunded away from us, and we have new money coming in, the numbers should be better.
You'll hope to be wrong with this assumption
I
then.
hope to be wrong with this assumption, and we've done a lot of things to try to make it wrong.
Good. Good luck.
Good luck. Good luck. Are there other questions or comments? Hearing none, the resolution is a very simple one. It appears maybe 10, 12 pages into the packet. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Charlie, thank you very much. All in favor, please indicate with aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. So in my years of both public service and private service, I've learned a few things from some very important leaders. Leadership is about listening, learning, and executing. And as I had said to you 10 months ago when I came to this institution, that I would listen, learn, and I would make changes. And I would make changes because I felt that we had to have a simpler, more integrated organization that would be efficient, impactful, and can better partner with institutions that we provide construction services and financing with. What I have presented to you is the new DASNY organizational structure. Go through that, but I'd like to really just walk you through a couple of the major changes that we have made. This has been done collaboratively in terms of a listening tour, not just internally, but externally, but really spending time at every level of this organization. I have charged each of the managing directors and the next layer of leadership to engage each of the members of their team to identify ways that we can improve DASNY. So let me just start with a couple of things. First, opportunity programs and procurement form a new group in construction. This group is termed resource acquisition. This move brings both units together under one umbrella. It integrates MWBE contracting directly into the contracting process in DASNY's biggest spending area by far. So the resource acquisition group is going to be co-headed by Sorelli in the procurement area and Michael Clay. All right, so they will be joined at the hip. They will report to Paul Koopman, all right, who reports to Steve Kuro. So that is completely integrated. Utilization is everyone's responsibility at DASNY, first and foremost. Procurement is one of the most important functions we have in this organization. So there's more work that we will be doing in that space, but that is a very important partnership that we've put in place. The Office of Executive Initiatives is now the Specialized Services and Client Solutions Division. It remains under Caprice Spahn. We have brought environmental services, real property management, and information services together. This puts attention on services we offer to clients and furthers our ability to display them as a competitive advantage to DASNY. All units that manage DASNY's finances are now under Chief Financial Officer Kim Nadeau. Budget and payroll join accounts payable, accounting and financial reporting, debt management, and investments. This is a very simple, straightforward, natural pairing and returning each of these units to their home. This will give us the economies of scale, help us in terms of efficiencies, and more importantly, technology is very important to this group and organization. So this is an organization that is charged with finding a way to automate processes and streamline them across all of our financial capabilities. Operations has been named Operations and Human Capital. This change puts, bless you, renewed emphasis on our greatest resource, the people at DASNY. Another area that's very important, I've placed internal affairs, very important area that seemed to be lost in the organization within the legal unit. So that's very important. This is a natural grouping as an internal affairs routinely works with the legal team to help protect DASNY's assets and organizations. Where that will sit, we have created a compliance unit. So again, we're focused on simplicity, efficiency, and managing our exposures and risks. These are very important elements in terms of how we cultivate a strong organization that will serve the people of this state and that will partner, all right, with institutions in the healthcare space as well as higher education. That's a very critical step. Now this is all done after more than 9 months of engaging both, groups, big, small. We have received very favorable responses, and part of that is, as I had telegraphed to each of you, I came into the organization and telegraphed to each and every one that we have to embrace change, that we have to be persistently innovative, that we have to be persistently thoughtful and responsive to our partners and our clients, and demand more from the partners who provide services to DASNY. So if you have a contract with DASNY, all right, we want a value-added partnership. We should be no different in what we expect from our partners than any of the corporations outside of public service. So that's very important. We want to have the values and a culture that will be about execution, that will be about simplicity, that will be managing our risk and exposures at all times. So had a lot of communication with the MDs, a lot of support, and certainly thank each of the leaders of my team in terms of really turning over the stones and thinking through some of the challenges present. I want to give special thanks to both Dan Petroff and Tiffany Bryant. They were very essential to my brainchild in which we bounced these ideas, and I charged them with the responsibility of going around and talking to people after I had spoken to folks. We spent a lot of time with divisions and people at every level of this organization in getting a sense of what matters to them, what values are important to this organization. How do you define our mission? So that's what we have here. I'm happy to take any questions, but if you look at the chart, again, DASNY is a very sizable institution. What we have sought to do is simplify the structure and find continuity in terms of how we deliver services. So as you look at the notes, the green moniker really indicates the units that we have moved, and the, I don't know what that is, that's tan. That would represent a unit that we've created, and by creation, it means taking it out of another entity and just making it standalone. And then, of course, the blue boxes represent the direct reports to the president. One of the things that I think is very important at my level is making sure that I have exposures, not just at the managing director level, but beyond that, 2, 3 levels into this organization. So that's what we're doing. That's what we've done. And the other thing is, I'm not finished. So if it doesn't work, we'll change it again. The responsibility is to make sure that we have a strong organization that can execute, get things done, and we're doing that. So,
Gerard, thank you. Are there questions for Gerard?
What's under internal affairs? What is that?
Investigation is the hotline. Anything that comes in as a grievance under contract or any action that we're undertaking as an organization. And it's basically the investigatory arm of the dormitory authority.
Like your own, something like an internal DLI, basically?
It's very comparable to that, yes.
The construction doesn't how does that interact with construction?
Daily.
Are there other questions for Gerard in this context?
good luck. Thank you. As an extension of this change, one of, again, things that we're committed to doing here, always having the right people, the right seats, the right policies, right procedures, and being able to make sure that we manage exposures and risks. At the end of last year, I sat down with the senior team in construction and legal, and we put together a procurement training entity that I think at some point we would love to unveil to you, highlight what we have identified as risks that we are rectifying. And again, if utilization is the commitment and the mandate of everyone at DASNY, we want people to be trained, and we have had a training module, a number of training modules that Steve, Michael Clay, Mike Krusak, Michael Corrigan, Caprice Spahn, Fran Lewis, Mauro Lapatina, Dan Petroff, Tiffany Paul Quigley, Jack Kemp, Lou Sorelli, and myself have unveiled to hundreds of people at DASNY. So this is only a beginning. Very important. This is in the procurement training. We're going to unveil this for other groups and divisions at DASNY, because again, we want to make sure that we have the right protocols in place so that we are able to execute, and everyone understands, okay, the risks and the importance of compliance. So, thank you. That's it.
Thank you. There being no questions, we're going to go back.
I just wanted to comment in commending you, Gerard, for expeditiously undertaking this review and moving it to conclusion without delay. And I think board having reviewed it and obviously accepted it, that it's now our job to support you in that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Well, you and I know. All right. So I learned a lot of this stuff many years ago when we served together, And I always said that when given an opportunity, it is important to listen, learn, but understand that you do have to execute. And don't be afraid to make mistakes. And if I've made a mistake here, we'll rectify that. I think I've got a very deep team. This is a strong organization, and we'll work on that. So thank you.
Often the biggest mistake is not taking action.
Absolutely.
We have another resolution to consider before we move on. It's the fee structure resolution, which is in the packet of information which all been present. It's tab 11. Find it. Oh, here it is. It is immediately behind the operating budget resolution. And it is simply titled Resolution Adopting Fee Structure for the Long-Term Authority of the State Board. You all have had a chance to review it. Are there any questions about it?
No changes, right?
Okay.
No changes.
That's right. May I have a motion please to approve it?
Yes.
Thank you, Ben. Is there a second? John Johnson, thank you very much. All in favor, please indicate with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. At this point, I'd like to have a motion to go into executive session to discuss the financial and credit history of particular corporations, as well as the employment history of particular persons or matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, etc., or discipline, suspension, or removal of a particular person. May I have a motion? The record will reflect that we've just left an executive session during which no decisions were made other than to return to the public session. The number 12, the person who would present the construction report, of course, is not here. So Kimberly, we're going to ask you to give your report, and we'll wait for.
Thank you. For the month of January, DASNY's reserves were essentially unchanged. On the HICRA side, the reserves decreased approximately $3.7 million, and that was a combination of approximately $5.7 million of advances and $2 million of receipts. The receipts came a little over half from one entity, and the advances were to 3 different entities, totaling the $5.7 million. There were no new commitments during the month. There were 4 significant advances that occurred during February. The total was $17.2 million. Those went to 2 entities. Wyckoff received 1 advance for $4 million, and Brookdale 3 advances totaling $13.2 million. At the end of the month, our receivables were $176 million, approximately 85% of which, or $149 million, have been reserved due to a belief of the inability to ultimately collect on those receivables. In terms of our operating expenses, we continue to be running below the budgeted levels for the year. Our quarterly treasurer's report is included in the package this month. We saw investment balances increase for the quarter by $167 million, and that was largely from new money bond issuances, and it was largely offset by construction expenditures and debt service payments. The net increase was primarily invested in federal agencies, treasuries, and certificates of ownership. On the operations side, as we've talked about in the last couple of months, we are continuing to work on automation of some of our processes, focused right now on the roughly 2,000 transactions that we process each month from our 2 largest trustees. We're also looking at ways to automate our review of expenditures that are subject to prevailing wage rates. We are in the process of implementing some of the organizational changes that Gerard discussed earlier. We've been pleased with the changes thus far and really seeing a lot of increase in communication. that concludes my report, unless anybody has any questions.
Are there questions for Kim? Hearing none, we'll go back to the construction report. Sorry. It's okay.
Okay, behind tab 12 are the three construction division reports. I'll start with the construction projects report. On the cover is are photographs of the residential village down at the Bronx Psychiatric Center, a project that we recently opened in January. The scope was the design and construction of 188 new beds with a total of about 96,000 square feet of housing and program space within three structures as follows. The studio apartment is 48 beds, 5 stories, 30,000 square feet. The transitional living residence was 96 beds, 4 stories, 40,000 square feet. And the Horizon House was 44 beds, 5 stories, 27,000 square feet. So you see the three new RV buildings in the top photo. The budget was $66 million. Design started in February of 2008 and completed November 2012. The Spectre Group was our design consultant. Construction began in August of 2012 and concluded this January. ARC, Mechanical and Electrical Contractors, was our single prime GC under a PLA, and Jacobs was our construction manager. Cost came in at $350,000 per bed, or another way of looking at it is $685,000 per square foot. A few unique features. This was a single prime GC project. However, there were multiple primes involved. We had primes for a window package for all 6 buildings. This was 3 buildings out of 6 that were constructed. We had an elevator prime who worked in all 6 buildings, low voltage contractors who worked in all 6 buildings as well. So although it was a single prime project, there were multiple primes involved with the delivery. As I said, we negotiated a PLA with the New York City BCTC. We had a 30% MWBE goal, and that goal required that half of the 30% came from subcontracting rather than suppliers. 18% of the labor force was from the Bronx. We utilized BIM, or Building Information Modeling, on this project, and we rolled the model right into OMH's facility management system, from which they'll manage ongoing operations.
Excuse me, did you say $685 per square foot?
Sorry, $685 per square foot.
Moses.
Yeah,
Yeah.
685.
685,000?
Just checking if you were paying attention there.
Steve, how does the timetable, ultimate costs, and scope compare to what was originally agreed to and budgeted?
We were supposed to complete the project in the summer of 2015, so we were about 6 months off. There's a lot of reasons for that. I think I could point on the residential village to a number of design error and omissions that cropped up that forced us to redesign areas like the mechanical systems. There were errors with the elevator design, so the contractor was not able to proceed in the manner that they had originally planned. So we lost about 6 months there. We're still working on the budgetary numbers. We haven't closed the project out, so I can give you an update on that once we're a little closer to close out. We haven't negotiated all the change orders, and there's a few disputed change orders that aren't through the pipe yet either. So we don't have a final figure.
Do you expect to be within budget, or?
We are over the budget for this particular project. How far over? I don't have my final numbers in.
And overall scope was relatively consistent throughout the project?
If you're asking about program changes from OMH, there were program changes along the way. but, you know, on a project this size, on a project this long in duration, you would expect that.
Thank you.
Yep. On page 3 of the Office of Construction report, there are 4 categories of projects that are displayed on that page. The last category, drop projects, is one I just want to explain a little deeper. We have a project there for CUNY, solid state lighting, and it's not always on every report that we have projects that fall into that category, but on this particular report we do. There's reasons why a project may be dropped. The reasons include merging a project scope with another project, or if a project has remained unfunded for some period of time, a customer of ours may choose to drop it, or a customer may choose to take the project on themselves. In this particular case, this project came to us in 2012 with a $5 million budget, no scope, so really not a defined scope, but we anticipated that there would be lighting enhancements across the CUNY system. That was really the original idea here. In December 2014, $3.1 million was added to the project. In February 2016, $3.65 million was pulled off the project and put toward other CUNY projects. To date, there have been no expenditures, no encumbrances against the remaining $4.45 million, and CUNY has told us that they are going to take this project back. So whether it actually moves forward or not, we're not sure, but it does fall under the drop projects category. I think the other categories are fairly self-explanatory. Any new additions that are $5 million or greater, you see 5 examples under new additions. Construction completed means that we've either achieved a certificate of occupancy or a temporary certificate of occupancy, and you see the three of the Bronx projects there. And design phase to construction phase means we've formally done the handoff from our design shop over to the construction side, and we're either out to bid and award or we're awarding contracts. So just a quick explanation of the different categories of workload changes under that report. Back on page 8 is the construction expenditures. Current year-to-date, we're at $506 million. That compares to prior year-to-date of $632 million. The delta is $126 million. I'll update you on a couple of our ongoing projects. I'll start with the Court Officers Training Academy. On February 24th, we had a meeting with our general contractor, at which time the GC was to deliver a plan to complete the project. The project's been delayed. The original project completion date was December of 2015. The GC is projecting at this time March 2017. The purpose for the meeting was really a last chance offering to the GC prior to termination to tell us how they plan to complete the project. They asked for an extension to February 26th, and on February 29th, we received their response, which we're reviewing today. Our customer is aware of the project status. We've been attending bi-weekly project meetings. The next one is actually tomorrow. So the project continues, although the GC has been problematic. At the Science Center up at City College, we have one request for equitable adjustment left to be negotiated. In addition, over the past few weeks, we have validated the remaining 1,200 open punch list items. We're down to about 200. We're advancing toward contract closeout with our CM and advancing day 2 projects. In addition, we've now closed out all prior GMPs on the project. We're up to GMP 8.3. There have been 7 prior GMPs that we've closed out at this point. At Baruch, the canopy work is wrapping up. With the better weather, we're going to be putting the final roofing installation in place, and we see that happening within the next month. On the Gozer front, we continue to receive new project requests from Gozer. Since January, in the upstate area, we've received 6 new project requests totaling about $12 million. Downstate, we just turned 2 feasibility studies into projects, which have a total project value of $30 million. So overall, the GOZER effort on the community redevelopment side is approaching about $125 million of work. On NYCHA, we did a cash flow analysis for the 12 priority projects and forwarded that on to DOB for consideration. We now have cost estimates from our CMs for the 12 priority projects, and we have written LOIs to our 3 job order contracting entities who bid the work, so they're getting close to being ready to go. So we're very close to moving those security projects forward. SUNY Fredonia, I haven't spoke about this for a while. As you remember, the winter of 15-16, we had some issues out there with weather issues, water infiltrating the living spaces. We met with SUNY Fredonia and SUNY's Office for Capital Construction on March 1 last week to discuss the remedies that were implemented last summer and a go-forward strategy. Unfortunately, this past winter, we really didn't get to test all the changes that we made due to the warm weather. What we agreed to do was monitor again during the winter of 16-17. There are a few additional issues that the college is asking us to look into, and we're moving those forward. Next up is...
Can you give us just a little bit of an overview of what efforts, what was done to try to remedy that situation?
Yeah. Basically, we had an inboard gutter system. I mean, if you, on all of our houses, we have a gutter system, which you can see. It's outboard. It's on the external face of the home. The architect designed an inboard gutter system where you actually can't see the gutter. It's interior to the exterior facade. That system had issues with the snow melt and the nighttime freeze up of that snow melt. And as a result, some of the roofing popped and the water was getting in underneath the roof. It infiltrated the living spaces, not all the townhouse spaces, but, and I don't remember the number of units and the number that were infiltrated, but about maybe 15 to 20% of them had water infiltration. So the remedies were to, first of all, we had a third party come in and take a look at the situation, and they provided some detail that had us going back and adding the correct amount of blown-in insulation in the attic space. Some of the detailing by the architect wasn't completely implemented in the field, so the contractor came back at their expense and reworked some of those details in accordance with the consultant. So we also added a heat trace system, which will allow for ice and snow to continually melt when the heat trace system is up and running. So those were a few of the ideas that were implemented. At South Beach Psychiatric Center, all bid packages, 5 of them, have now been advertised. Bid package 1, which was for site utilities and foundation work, was awarded in February. Construction on this project is expected to begin during the spring. And lastly, at FIT, the C² project, the college has reconciled the available funding with a scope of work. So this project is getting back on track at $148 million. We're going to begin to meet again with FIT and the architect this week on Friday to kind of jumpstart the project. Gerard noted earlier the procurement training that was done. That was associated with MWB compliance. A group of us trained the construction division as well as AP staff, OPG staff, and internal affairs staff on some new approaches toward compliance on our projects. We actually took the road show to Buffalo, New York, and here in Albany. Just Some new strategies associated with some of the forms that we use, including the utilization plan, our AIA payment voucher, and our compliance reports. Implementation has already happened on the utilization plan, and our goal is for the pay voucher and compliance reports, the new forms, to be used for the March 30th check run. As Gerard mentioned, it was a collaborative effort across DASNY to move these new ideas with regard to compliance for Article 15A across the finish line. On the SUNY summer side, we're now up to 33 projects worth $46 million. They'll start in mid-May and complete in mid-August. We also have 7 capital projects worth $43 million that are ongoing today. So in total, we'll have about $90 million worth of projects that should complete by August. And on the division itself, we welcomed members from risk management and OPG into the construction division. We're working on integrating both functions into the division today. I delivered a presentation yesterday at New York Build at the Javits Center, a DASNY presentation. And lastly, Paul Koopman's delivering a DASNY presentation on March 16th to the New York City Construction Financial Management Association. That concludes my report.
Thanks, Steve. Are there other questions for Steve? Let me say that I had an opportunity to attend his presentation yesterday morning at the Javits Center. At the risk of embarrassing you, I thought it was excellent. It's just an excellent presentation on the construction division at DASNY, and it was an ABCs, the ABCs of DASNY's construction division for people who were potentially prime contractors, subcontractors, and others. I learned a lot there, frankly. I learned things that I didn't know I didn't know. And so I've recommended, I've had a conversation with Steve and a brief conversation with Gerard, and I've asked whether or not we might find a way to rejigger it where it needs to be tweaked a bit, and to have it in some form or another presented to this board at some point in the relatively near future, whenever we can fit it in. I recommend it highly. It was a great presentation. Thanks. I enjoyed it enormously. Thank you, Steve. Sir, the General Counsel's report.
Very short update. At next month's meeting, the full board will consider election of officers as required annually. I'd also like to note that the DASNY subsidiary meetings will take place immediately following our April board meeting. To ease congestion on this month's calendar, this is one of our longer meetings of the year, the governance committee meetings for each subsidiary will immediately precede the meeting of each subsidiary's board. So we'll combine governance with regular subsidiary meetings next month. Last, the audit committee is currently scheduled to meet next month to consider the internal controls report, internal audit report and plan, and review of the audit committee charter. If you have any comments or concerns on any of these items for next month, please let us know. Be in touch. All other matters relevant to Council's office are represented by the comprehensive agenda we had today, and that would conclude my report. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mike. Questions for Mike? Portia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Behind tab 15 are the standard public finance reports. Since last month's board meeting, we did price the financing for the library transaction that was Comsquad Town Libraries. Brief market update. There's stronger than expected economic data last week, which contributed to sort of a general risk-on sentiment. Both news and treasury rates in 5, 10, and 30-year range show double-digit increases for the week, with the exception of 30-year treasuries, which increased at 6 basis points. Municipal supply last week was also strong and exceeded $10.8 billion, making it the heaviest weekly volume for the year. This week's supply is also quite strong. It's expected to exceed $8.7 billion. Municipal bond funds continue to see weak inflows. Since the February board meeting, the one-year MMD has increased 8 basis points, while the 10 and 30-year MMD have increased 27 and 18 basis points respectively, while the 10 and 30-year Treasury yields have increased 9 and 8 basis points from the February board meeting. There is in the packet the single approval pipeline report. So as you'll recall, this report includes a brief description of the project, expected ratings, anticipated security, bond counsel, and targeted board meeting dates. We did consider earlier in this meeting both the Columbia and the Fordham transactions. Pratt is included in that report. We expect to bring that transaction to the board in April. The other thing I would note is that, again, included in my report is a status report on active inquiries. There are a number of transactions, as you'll see, that are included in that report, reflective of a pretty active pipeline, as Gerard had indicated previously. In addition to Culinary Institute and MSK, which brought to you last month and this month, we do expect to see shortly Pratt Institute, Comac Library, NYUHC, NYU, that's Hospital Center, and generally speaking, we'll bring a school district programmatic authorization to the board, usually sometime around April. So, again, a strong and building pipeline. That concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Yep.
The Special Ed School District, Little Flower, has been on for quite some time. Is that still an open issue?
It is. We continue to work with Little Flower, and they continue to work through sort of the various governmental approvals that they need.
Okay.
Yep.
Are there other questions for Portia? Caprice, the Office of Special Services and Client Solutions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As part of DASNY's realignment, the Office of Executive Initiatives is now known as Specialized Services and Client Solutions Division. We've acronymed it to SSCS. Information Systems and Sustainability are now joined by the Department of Environmental Affairs and Real Property. The Real Property Department continues its work with Department of Mental Hygiene divisions, and DASNY looks to maximize its assistance that we can provide DMH. Environmental Affairs continues its work with our internal customers of public finance and construction. OEA is also looking to maximize the services that we can provide to external clients that do not have in-house environmental affairs types of divisions. Finally, Information Systems welcomes a new director of IS later this month. Ann Andrews will be introduced to you at the April board meeting. Ann Andrews replaces Lee Favita, who retired last year. We would like to thank Paul Quigley, who worked as the acting director upon Lee's departure. He did a great job, and we appreciated his service. That's the end of my report. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Are there questions for Caprice? Hearing none, is there any other business to come before this board? Hearing none. Our next regular meeting is the 13th of April. It's going to be here in the Albany office. May I have a motion, please, to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Sandra. Charlie, thank you for the second. All in favor, please indicate with aye. Aye. Opposed, the motion carries. We are adjourned.
Portia, is Kim Barrett out? I think you were mentioned before.
Part of it, and then
Yeah, no, I'm sure you do.
That would be a good.
I can't get that.